can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. Trying to be thankful here on a beautiful Sunday after a mind-melting concert last night with Cass McCombs, Farmer Dave Schur, and Alex Koford here in Tucson. And I have a chance today to speak to an incredibly gifted pianist who I think understands that this is a constant journey. You're always kind of a student, even when you become a master. And she's definitely searching for her own individual sound. And she's Brooklyn born and raised. Julia Chen, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's an honor to have you. Can I ask you about your exposure to? Basically, in my mind, we've become one big civilization now with full interconnection, and our culture, in some ways, is being stifled to a degree, and being from sort of a multi-ethnic background, I'm just wondering about the culture that your folks exposed you to as a girl.
Ooh, culture that they exposed me to. I mean, I think both my parents went about it in really different ways. So my dad was born in China and my mom was born in Poland. They met in the U.S. And I think they both have kind of a different relationship to their own, original culture. Like, my mom kind of moved out and maybe didn't feel that much of a connection to a lot of Polish culture, but then she still brings me to a Polish Christmas caroling event every year and taught me Polish and all sorts of stuff. And then my dad is still really, really close with all his family in China, and he'll bring me to China with him to go visit my grandparents and all of that. But he never taught me Chinese. And I kind of so I speak Polish, but I cook Chinese, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, I got this impression that you are the mother of my children is Taiwanese, so both my daughters are, Western, and also so we went to Taiwan quite a bit, and I just wonder about when you go to China, because my Chinese really didn't progress very much at all. I didn't learn any either, unfortunately. And
mine neither. Yeah.
It's just really her, and I could tell. I was you were born and raised in Brooklyn. I'm she's completely Americanized, which is great. But I do know that when you go back to China, because you have a really deep soul and you're artist. Do you? I've actually not been to China. I've only been to Taiwan, but do you feel the remnants at all of how deep the culture was at one time in China? I mean, there was nothing hipper at one time than being almost like a beat poet, artist, thinker. I'm going back to different dynasties, but I'm saying that stuff now, it's so hard to. I have my best friend here, not to go off on a rant here, but he's a planetary sciences professor. He could literally coast through the rest of his career at the University of Arizona, but he's completely obsessed with Chinese language and the culture, and he's moving to Peking University. He speaks fluent Chinese, but the point is that the culture is, even in this country, I believe we've become a huge civilization and lacking in culture. Do you still? What is the closest thing to the spiritual side of life? Can you talk about in your trips to China? Not going to the Great Wall, but I mean, was there a music festival? Did you have a chance to do any type of what was the most sort of spiritual exposure you had in China?
So before you said not going to the Great Wall, I was going to say going to Xi'an to see the really, really old, what's it called, the whole grave of that emperor that I've now forgotten the name of.
It's okay.
But I think that's a tourist attraction similar to the Great Wall, so maybe I shouldn't list that now.
Well, you can do whatever comes into your heart. I mean, I guess all I'm saying is I wound up on a stage one time in Donggang, which is in southern Taiwan, and there was like this dude playing. There were these women in these like very garish outfits, like dancing with, and then there was like this ridiculous fusion drummer. Looking back on it, he was just a monster drummer. He was smiling ear to ear, and then there was this guy on the other side of the stage playing. Like, it wasn't a Fender Rhodes. It was like some kind of electric piano, but it was like this was like classical fusion mixed with traditional Chinese dance. And this was like in the middle of like some fishing town in Taiwan. And I was like, damn, this is, and I was just on fire. I mean, they let me go up there and like bang on like a little plastic chair to, whatever, but I was like, this. At one time, it was the most spiritual, and India too. It was just the most spiritual place, and I just feel like it's being repressed in so many ways. We get so many great doctors and so many great doctors, scientists from these places. We used to get gurus, we used to get gurujis, we used to get spiritual teachers, and it's so. I just wanted to know if you had any kind of aside from the. Obviously there's just amazing, rich cultural things that you can take in visually, but, musically, was there anything transcendent in the East that you've experienced?
Musically, I mean, I saw an opera there that was just like amazing. It was like the old Peking style opera. I mean, that's just crazy because, like, we still use the word opera, but it's, like, not what Western culture thinks of as opera.
Can you talk to the people about what it is?
Different.
Yeah, what is different about it?
Oh, I mean, it's, like, very traditional Chinese costumes, and they have these, like, drums, and then the singing is, like, extremely high-pitched from both genders. And I think it might be mostly cross-dressed men. I think it might be all men.
Wow.
Singing. Or, I don't know. I could be wrong about
right, well,
that.
We'll get more information on that later. That's unbelievable, though.
But they're a lot of them. They're singing falsetto and like extremely high, and then they have this like really really melodramatic makeup on their faces. It's usually like all white, and it's like the singing is so high that it's almost like a little bit piercing, and then it sounds like very, very, very emotional. And with the drums, it's like almost like wailing during certain parts of it. I don't know. I mean, it's really cool.
I feel like, part of me would kind of lose my mind after a while if there was no dynamics. I mean,
oh no, there are definitely dynamics.
Okay, yeah, no, I was going to say. I mean, this is Julia. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I want you to pay particular attention to this voice, and then the content, and we'll come back and break it down.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a great question, and a great thing to talk about because I got to say, if you are playing 150 shows a year,
right,
like I am, which just immediately, opens people's eyes up that way. They're like, whoa, okay, right. Like, if you're performing and playing for people that many days of the year, you are wanting to get better and better at it every month, every gig, every year. And I feel like it just sort of naturally grew from, the experimental, instrumental, rock sort of jazz stuff. And, it sort of grew into me, experimenting you could even hear it from record to record. There's some songs that are like, whoa, that's like really upbeat and dancey. And then there's like, oh, there's two songs that are more upbeat and dancey that, in my sort of way that we were at, like in this sort of jazzy rock sort of way. And then the third record, it's like, oh, it's more dancey. And then this fourth record, Tiger Face, I actually made a track with the singer from Rubble Bucket, and her name is Calmia Travers, and she's amazing, an amazing singer. And she came up to the studio, and I played her what I'd done with Chamberlain, and she came up with vocal idea, and then we added vocals to the tune, and then all of a sudden the tune went from rock jazz to like pop. It felt like almost not pop, but
yeah,
it felt like
but that. You knew you had that was your call though. You wanted to bring her in. You knew she'd add the pop element.
Well, I did, but I also in my head I was hearing a female vocalist on that one track, and even another track. I had another track that was an instrumental chord progression with a melody that I improvised on the piano, and I wrote lyrics to that melody, and then I had Cal sing it because I was imagining in my head a girl's voice. So,
Julia, thank you for sitting through that, my friend. What do you know who that is?
No, I have no idea. I'm fascinated. Who is it?
That is a former, I don't want to say teacher, but someone that you collaborated with was Marco Benevento.
Oh, that's Marco Benevento. That's so funny.
Yeah,
I haven't actually talked to him in years.
I think I'm like when I saw your and I just want to, for my audience, I just want to explain. We're speaking to an incredibly gifted artist right now, and Julia Chen, but you've learned under masters. I'm not saying Marco is a master, but I'm saying he is also a very inventive character. When I saw that on your resume, I said, "Wow!"
Oh, yeah.
So I know that you like to. So I mean, can you talk about how that relationship came to be, and like what you and how you guys connected on the musical level?
I mean, I actually was taught by him before. I think he was before he hit the big time. I think I was really young. Like I just was taking piano lessons from whoever. I think my previous teacher, Peter Stoltzman, was a friend of Marco's, and he had to move out of New York. I was taking piano lessons. I was like 12 or something like that. And he was like, "Oh, you should take with my friend Marco." And my mom was like, "Oh, okay, let's find Marco."
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, he's like this, he puts out this super awesome album with Joe Russo and, is now, doing all sorts of big-time things. So I was kind of young. I didn't really know what was going on when I was getting lessons from him, but he was lovely. I mean, he was really, really nice to me and definitely kind of eye-opening. And I love his approach of how open he is to every genre. I mean, he was talking in that quote that you just played, about how he's skipping around between pop and jazz and just all sorts of stuff. I mean, he has a toe in everything and he can do a little bit of everything. So, I mean, it was really great to have a teacher like that.
Well, aside from the name That Voice, I wanted to ask you about what resonated with what he was talking about is, I think that genres have really crippled the ability for music to grow, the vocabulary of music to grow. You label something, you say this is jazz. You get 15 different definitions of what different definitions of what jazz is, but
right.
I wanted the Julia Chen concept of are you from the Duke Ellington school of it's all music, and then the subjective part is it's either good or bad. Because I mean, I haven't seen you play before, but it's easy to get pigeonholed. And I just want you to talk. Are you from the Duke Ellington school, or do you believe that stratification of music is necessary to gain a niche?
I mean, I think there's some elements for both that are, true or at least useful to think about. But usually I have a lot of trouble. I mean, people ask me what genre my music is, or they're like, "Can you describe it?" I'm like, just draw a blank for 10 minutes, and then they walk away,
Yeah.
But it's just really hard to try and pigeonhole anything like you said. On the other hand, you kind of, it's useful to have some way of describing what it is, but then, I think about a lot of my favorite music, whether it's, more quote unquote poppy stuff like Cesar or Anderson .Paak or something like that,
right.
Or whether it's more jazz-ish stuff or Weather Report or something like that. And it's all these combinations of so many different genres. And I mean, even jazz was a combination of classical, Afro-Cuban, blues, all sorts of
Absolutely.
stuff.
I just love what you're riffing. You're like a poet right now. Keep going. Yeah, this is great.
Oh God. Yeah. So I mean.
But again,
so
you can lose people. It's just, I guess, my first book is coming out, Julia, and I really can't wait for you to take to read it, because it's been 8 years. I mean, we're just getting hip to each other, but I've done 4,000 radio interviews, and One of the cats in the book who's left us is Ndugu Chancellor, who was a ridiculous drummer, most well-known on the pop level. He played on Billie Jean, Michael Jackson's tune, but the guy was like the heaviest, jazz drummer. Played with Weather Report, Santana, everybody. And he said that when he used to play with Hampton Hawes, which is a pianist, I love him so much, and he said that, Hamp was like, when it came down to something, to a musical genre, he said, just get close to it. Don't marry it. You don't have to marry it. Just get close to it. Touch on it. Touch the essence of it. But at the end of the day, let's stop sitting around intellectualizing this music. We need to just sit down and play and let us. And I want to talk to you, Julia, about when you realized that you were merely a conduit for what you were a channel for the music coming through you from the heavens. That you are really only partially responsible for the gifts that you have. When did you realize that that the music is coming through you?
I think kind of when you start doing transcription of any sort, like in school, and they're like, yeah, transcribe this solo and this solo and this solo by like all these legends and famous people, and then you start, once you have that in your head, and then you go to shows and hear the same lines,
right,
and are like, oh, everybody's been quoting this guy,
right,
and he was quoting this other person, and they were quoting this other thing, and they were quoting Beethoven, and Beethoven was quoting, just all sorts of stuff. So I think that entire process is kind of humbling. And then, if I go to solo after doing some sort of transcription of, let's say I transcribed like a Herbie Hancock solo, then I find myself for the next week just accidentally playing all of those lines, and I'm like, oh, you know what? Everything that I'm playing is really coming from something else, whether I'm aware of it or not, I guess.
Well, I'm going to ask you to go deeper than that, because, I'm talking about the idea of when you get off the bandstand and they're like, Julia, how did you do that? And you say something like, I have no idea. It just happened,
Right.
It was when you get out of I'm talking, I'm not a musician. I play drums, but I'm not a professional musician. But you can feel with four-way coordination, and it's the same thing if you're playing pedals on the piano or you're playing an organ or whatever. But it's like the spiritual part of music is really when you transcend and leave your physical body. And as opposed to having some, I just don't think. My feel about you is that you're not somebody who is a rote performer, meaning you're not going to go up there and just play the same song the same way once or play the same set list, And quite honestly, all I care about with my peers is to just my message to them is to continually push themselves into uncomfortable or uncharted waters musically. So and I've talked to guys that have never done any drugs in their entire lives, like Billy Cobb. Billy Cobham talks about just leaving his physical body and being able to actually see himself on the side of the stage playing drums, where he actually left his physical body. Has that happened to you?
Oh, that's cool.
Or something along those lines?
That hasn't happened to me. I think that the closest I come to that is feeling, I don't get this as much when I'm playing solo piano, but once you add drums and bass and then you're part of this group, then it kind of becomes this organism that's larger than the sum of its parts, because everybody's interacting in this way that's completely impossible to describe and hard to remember, and you'd have a hard time pinpointing oh, I played this chord at that moment because the drummer played this, and then before that he played that because the bassist played blah blah blah. So it just becomes kind of this moving organism or symbiotic relationship that just turns into something completely else, and every rhythm section is always different, and every group is different, and so I try to feel the power of that when I'm on stage with other people. Like, wow, I'm so grateful that I get to be part of this. Like, I get to play with these amazing people. I get to connect with them at this level that we would never connect necessarily in conversation. But like musically, I can listen to them and respond and then create this whole atmosphere and this whole mood, that wouldn't have been there necessarily if it were just me or just them.
I mean, you also recognize. I mean, you're grateful for being part of the group, but I mean, like, can you talk about like how you cultivated the conversational element of music? I mean, do you listen back? Do you listen to like Bill Evans live at the Village Vanguard with Scotty LaFaro and Paul Motian? You know, like that those trio performances from the early '60s. Claire Fisher was doing a lot of this stuff on the West Coast. It's like the bass is no longer. I mean, the bass is locking the groove, but he's also playing melodically. I mean, the language is so conversational, and there's nothing really worse than seeing people wank it up there. But if you're going to be a moving organism, like you talked about this like this starship, this thing that's moving along, there has to be a conversational element to it. And I mean, can you talk about how you cultivate, not just you, but I mean, do you find yourself have you been able to work in a consistent working group so that you guys can develop a lot of trust and love on the bandstand in order to create that conversation and raise collective consciousness?
Yeah, I mean, in college, I definitely did a lot of that. We were all, I went to college in Oberlin, which is in Ohio. And so, Oberlin is this very, very small town in the middle of like rural Ohio. So, the tiny jazz department is all just kind of stuck with each other for 4 years. You see the same people every single day, and then you just end up playing constantly. And so I think the connections that you get from that are like really, really magical. What you can create just, without even necessarily trying. Like if you just end up playing every other day with the same people, then you're going to have kind of a vibe by the end of it. You're going to like know without even being able to describe, like, oh, when they play this, then I want to play this, and then this happens, and then we create this this whole thing about it. And so I've been, New York is very different in that the scene is huge and spread out, and people live far away from each other. To recreate that, I mean, I've been playing with the same quartet my music for a long time, and it's been really great to see like how that develops as everybody starts memorizing all the songs, and then we can kind of riff on them, and I'll be like, oh, today I want to add this intro and like this interlude in the middle, and I want to do the solos like this, and it just goes somewhere completely else.
I mean, I need you to talk to me about a dear friend of mine and one of your teachers. Please tell me a really good Gary Bartz story.
Oh my gosh. So I didn't actually interact with Gary that much during college. I think he was, busy, and he spends most of the time when he was in Oberlin teaching the saxophone students.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. I think he was like the leader of like one of my compos, and we saw him like twice over the course of the semester.
I don't, dude. This is because I just figured he'd lock in on someone like you, like an authentic, brilliant. I mean, because I think Eddie Henderson teaches there or did teach there too. But so he.
Oh, not while I was there, but that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, so there's really you're not going to be. You didn't. Did you get to jam with him though?
I don't know. No, I didn't. I mean, we saw him play live a couple times, and that's amazing. I mean, I was always like, kind of like struck down by just his tone and how beautiful it is. But I heard great things from all the sax players at Oberlin came out, sounding pretty amazing. And so whatever he was doing with them must have been working. And I think he's another one of those musicians who's like extremely open-minded in what they do in terms of like genre or anything else. Because he'll be on all these traditional, quote unquote, more traditional like jazz records, but then he also has all of this newer stuff that's like more influences of like pop and R&B and electronics. And so, I worry about some schools where, like, for example, like jazz is taught in a very like traditional way, and like, oh, you must learn like these standards and you have to check out these recordings, and then you have to, play swing in this particular way, and then like, oh, we don't do pop, like, no, that's not for us. And so, I think he, among other people, really cultivate a very, very different, much more like open idea of what is music and what is good music.
Well, you're 100% right, and that part of that has to do with the fact that when he went to Juilliard in '65, there was no jazz curriculum. I mean, it was a street music. And
right.
That's
right.
what I'm. So, Julia, I mean, how because you get inundated now. I mean, how long have you been out of school for?
I forget. I'm terrible at years.
It's been a few.
I think it's like 6 years.
Yeah,
7 years, something like that.
Exactly. So, I mean, you strike me as somebody. How have you learned to? Oberlin is a great music school, but in truth, with YouTube, this is what Gary, and I've done a bunch of interviews with Gary that you'll really love, because what he talks about, and I just want you to riff on this as it relates to your own evolution. He said with jazz, for instance, everybody learned by ear. Okay, with him,
Mm-hmm.
It was all learned by ear. Charlie Parker would put on the radio, listen to
Mm-hmm.
every kind of song, and learn to play it in every key. Okay, and then the reading of it came after, but the ears were already, like I told you yesterday, you have big ears. I said their ears were already unlocked. He said in today's world, younger cats, they're first learning to read music before they learn to hear it. Okay, so their ears are locked. Where do you fall on that spectrum? Did you learn to play by ear?
So my mom was actually my first teacher when I was like pretty young, and I think she was teaching me, or kind of not even by ear, maybe by rote, like where you just show like young kids, you're just playing it with one finger, and then they try to play it back with one finger.
That's like me, yeah, exactly, yeah, I did.
Yeah, but I think eventually, she started trying to teach me by ear, and that's what I do with my young students now. I mean, even at age like 4, you can be like, I play this game, and they don't always know why. They're like, oh, or I have them turn around so they can't see the piano when I do that, of course, so they have to guess. And then, they're always, they're 4, so they're like trying to sneak a peek at the piano because they think it's like hilarious to break my rule. But anyway, whenever, when I could get them to actually not look at the piano and not peek, they're always like, oh, I heard that it was going up, like, without even looking at it. It just seemed like it was going up.
Exactly.
I'm like, great, that's exactly what it is. And then I bring it like one step harder for them every time. Then next I'm like, okay, we're going to start on C, and then I'm going to play something that you're not going to look at. And then you're going to try to come back to the piano and start on C and then play what I played. And 5-year-olds can do this. So I think it is really essential to start learning by ear, like you said. Actually,
your mom obviously gave you sort of like the initial spark. But I mean, did you find yourself just putting on records or CDs or whatever, and just trying to play along to it to get to get your ears to grow? Because the reason we're just saturated with material now, we're drowning in it. Like as musicians, like you said, there are certain places in the academy that say you have to do it this. There's one way to do it. Well, Steve Swallow grew up playing with John Lee Hooker. I mean, these guys were playing in blues clubs in the ghettos of New Haven.
Right.
And the blues and the jazz were right alongside each other. Gary and I have talked about this. And when I hear modern jazz, melodic improvisation, whatever you want to call it, I hear a very classicalized music. I don't hear the blues as much because cats are learning by sight before they learn by ear. Did you, even if it was unconscious, did you find yourself just experimenting so that your ears would grow when you were younger?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, my parents would play like all these Beatles records, so I would definitely try to play all of those and see what happened. Yeah. And I mean, the Beatles are weird. Like, you think that it's this kind of like straightforward, all in 4/4 time, whatever, and then you actually try to play it and are like, oh my God, there's a bar of 3 that I literally never noticed in here because I just memorized the lyrics so much. And there's just like all sorts of crazy stuff going on with the chords. And I listened to the White Album when I was a kid, so that that one's pretty out. Yeah, so playing along with those was really interesting. But I've actually been thinking about this recently because I've been, for the first time, someone asked me to write like a string quartet arrangement of one of my tunes.
Whoa.
And I've never,
Whoa.
Well, not string quartet plus drums, bass, and guitar and vibes.
Congratulations. That's vibes.
I mean, it's a really cool.
It's badass. That's badass.
I've obviously never arranged for this type of setting. Also, I've literally never arranged for string quartet before. So I'm trying to go back to everything I learned, in college in the classical theory of like part writing. Where they have all those crazy rules of like, have you, I don't know if you've ever dabbled in part writing, but there are all these rules of like how you do 4-part harmony, and you can't have parallel fifths, but you can have parallel fifths in this situation, but then in this situation, like you have to do this workaround and like just crazy stuff. And I don't remember any of it. I mean, I know I took the theory in college. I know I passed those classes.
Right. But I mean, do you listen, I want to ask you something. Let's just stop. If you don't, I mean, can you still pull it off if you add your own individual voice to that stuff? Is it a dogmatic thing? Like, do you have to follow that, or if it will just fall apart? Or can Julia Chen put her own individual stamp on this thing?
Well, so their performance of it is on November 2nd, so we'll see.
Wow, this is right around the corner.
Yeah, I don't actually know. I mean, I'm trying. So basically what I've been doing is doing everything by ear.
Beautiful.
Like, Beautiful. I hope it kind of follows. I mean, the rules are in place because they're what sounds good. So all the, like, you can't move in parallel fifths, you can't move in parallel fourths, octaves have to go whatever this place, are because they sound good. Granted, what sounded good in, like, Bach's time or in Renaissance time might sound different to. I'm not particularly aware of what I'm adjusting and what I'm breaking and what I'm not breaking, but I have been. So one of my roommates, very fortunately, is actually a classical pianist. He's going to the Manhattan School of Music, and he does remember the part writing rules. So I've just been playing all of the string parts for him and being like, "Is this okay? Can I do this?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, that's fine."
I mean, you have to know
it'll work out.
Yeah, I think I can't wait to hear it. I mean, I think you have to know the rules in order to break the rules, but I
Right, that is the theory. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe it helps that I at one point did know the rules.
Yeah.
Because now I feel like I hear the thing and I'm like, I feel like this is breaking some sort of rule. It sounds slightly off to me and maybe I should do this.
Well, but I mean, there are,
part of the part writing coming through instinct,
There's a lot going through my head. I have another voice to play for you. This is not somebody you've worked with, or I don't believe, but
okay.
I want you to pay attention to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Sure.
The thing is basically when you're playing, and it's just not bebop. This is other music too, but bebop in jazz is probably. That's the high end of what we do as jazz musicians. But just the spirituality comes from it's like something. Now this may sound abstract, but it's something that Wayne Shorter said to me one time. He said that the only way you can really, really, really play is that you have to go to the store and buy some milk for your grandmother. You know, and when he said that to me and the drummer, Omar Hakim, now he had a few drinks, we were all drinking.
Right.
I said, wow. But a couple days later it hit me, you know, because, you know, it's like to come, if you have one of those kind of families, you go to see your grandmother, she says, go to the store and get me some milk, and you go there, there's a love, there's a love for something other than just what you're looking at. It's like your own personal love, which could come from God, which could come from the force of life. It could be whatever it is that you think makes you tick.
Mm-hmm.
That if you tap into that, whatever that is, it's not a material. It's not the instrument. It's not the notes. It's the life force. And that is very, when you operate on that band, that's or on that frequency in life, that is very spiritual. You know.
Julia, that was my first interview with Stanley Clark from
Okay.
September of 2014, and
Oh, wow.
and I just wanted you to talk about. It's a two-part question. I want you to talk about your concept of love, and I also want you to talk about the idea of, does it resonate with you when he told that anecdote about Wayne Shorter? You know, it's kind of like, you know, going to the store to get your grandmother some milk. Like, you know, it's a love, it's a frequency. I've been operating on that frequency as a broadcaster for a long time. Not every day, but I've tapped into that. I found my purpose and my true nature. And I ask you if you believe that you have found your true nature, and how often are you able to operate on that frequency, that love frequency of going to get your mom or grandma some milk?
I mean, I try every time I play. I don't, you know, it sometimes works better than other times.
When does it work good? How do you get out of your own way? Because that's when it really works well. I mean, you talked about that quartet where you're like, it's your quartet, and you're like, I want to play certain things a certain way. I'm not saying that you're a control person, but
sure.
What I'm trying to get at is, like, when are you able to channel that love the best?
I mean, so what I try to tell myself at the beginning of every performance is like two things. One is I try to like look at the piano and be like, wait, I enjoy this. Like, why am I so nervous? Why am I scared of doing this?
Yeah.
Why am I dreading like doing this right now? And why am I thinking like, oh my God, what if I mess up in the third song? Let's bring out. I want to show the audience that everything I love about this, and not that I'm just scared and nervous and worried about messing up in the third song. And then two is I try to think, like, I try to think about showing off the rest of the band. I try to think like this. Oh my God! Everybody that I'm playing, you know, this flute player I play with a flute player usually in my quartet. Like, he's amazing, and he has all this personality in everything that he plays. And then the drummer and bassist are like amazing, and I just want to show them off. And like, what can I play that will show off what a good band I have?
That's right. No, I dig. I knew you let other people accentuate that. Yeah.
Right. Right, and so I think that helps me get out of my head of being like, oh my God, like, what if I don't sound very good on the solo on this hard thing? And it's like, no, it's like, how can I accentuate my rhythm section? Or I think it was who was it who said like my favorite drummer is the one that I'm playing with right now?
Oh, I'll have to look that up. But I mean. You still.
So I try.
Yeah.
Whoever said that, I try to do that. Just like whatever drummer I'm playing with, and it's probably somebody who's very, very good. is going to be my favorite person, or favorite drummer for the time for the whatever songs that I'm playing with them, and I'm going to try to accentuate that, and that gets me a little bit out of my own like head and my own ego.
You just articulated it so well. I mean, is it possible for you to stop teaching and be a full-time musician? The reason I ask this question is, 50 years ago in New York City, before real estate became so commodified, Dave Liebman and Randy Brecker and Dave Holland and all these cats that are in my book that I've interviewed, they were living in these lofts for $160 a month, and they were making like $120 a week just in the studio, or maybe even more. They could make that in 1 week based on the amount of studio work, and then they could go out and play live. And maybe they'd have, but I mean, I'm sure you're an amazing teacher, but could you? Is it still does our society in the West still view a musician as a viable profession, or is music a musician's gift to the world?
I don't know if the West has ever viewed music as a viable profession.
It used to be. People used to get ahead, though. I mean, there was a time when.
I know.
Okay, but I'm with you. I'm just saying that there was a paradigm that. But I mean, I think the musicians basically for gigs have been getting paid the same rate since like 1984.
Right.
It hasn't gone up, and it speaks to me to say, oh, these guys. I mean, music is made for background. How is the here's the better question, because you're already making a living as a musician in your own way. How has the significance of music changed in our culture?
Oh man. Let me answer the first question first, because the second one is a big one, and I'm going to have to think about it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
But yeah, the first one, I mean, I think in New York it really depends on like how much you're going to hustle, what connections you're going to have, how, what's the level of your playing, how many, I don't know, all sorts of factors, but it's also like how comfortable do you want to be? Like, I could cut out all of my teaching from my work right now and from my income right now, but I probably wouldn't be able to live in the apartment that I do.
Well, where are you living in? Like, are you living on Central Park West or something? I'm kidding.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
No, I live in like Harlem, but like,
Yeah, you'd have
or
to
like
go.
I would probably have to like not, just cook. I would have to like cook myself rice and beans every day or something like that.
I dig. I mean, go ahead.
But to be fair, like I'm not living in the loft that you're talking about, that they were.
Right.
I mean, I have roommates, and it's like not a super expensive apartment by New York standards, but still, like if I were to do just like only gigs for me personally, I'll take the teaching and allow myself to live a little bit more luxuriously.
No, absolutely. No, I mean, I guess I want to also like Julia, like do you want, like, if you had your way, some people will get called and like, I interviewed like this banjo player, a really great banjo player, and lives in Brooklyn, and she got this gig doing the Oklahoma on Broadway, and it's like, it's a full time, like, it's kind of like pretty, but it's a gig, it's a paid gig, but it's not
totally,
it's not her band, it's not her music.
Right.
She's a hired gun, and like I just feel like with Julia Chen, like, would you, like, is that something that if someone came along and was like, yeah, you will give you have to play a formula gig, and it'll be good money. Or do you just want to play like, would you prefer to just play your music if you had that opportunity full time and not be a hired, it's a fine line between.
I mean, I would prefer, so there are different types of hired guns.
That's right.
Also.
That's right.
Like first of all, I would love to be playing more of my music and get paid tons of money for that. That would be lovely. But then also, like, within hired gun, like, I love playing as like a side man, like my friend's original music.
Right.
If somebody's like, I've got these original songs, like I want you to put your vision on them, and then, express yourself within the context of my vision, I love doing that. So that type of hired gun, I like to do, and I would like to do more. But then, the whole background music, weddings, blah blah blah. I could take or leave, like I'll do for money, but is not my dream vision. And I've actually kind of already turned down some versions of what you're talking about. So I used to, I still do some of this, but I used to do tons of dance class accompanying.
Yes.
So now I do like once a week I accompany a bunch of ballet classes. But I used to do like 10 classes a week of ballet, modern, Martha Graham, like all this stuff, and it's really cool. I mean, it's really awesome to do in like small doses. But maybe doing it full time was a lot for me. And although it does actually, it gives you a lot of free rein, a surprising amount of free rein. Like I wouldn't have expected a ballet class to kind of let you, but really you can play whatever you want. Like you can, if it sounds convincing and has like a clear rhythm, you can improvise the whole time. I know a lot of people who do that. You can play pop covers as long as they're rhythmically clear on solo piano.
I love this. Yeah, this is great.
I play tons of Christmas carols that just sound like Russian ballet music, because that's where they're coming from as well.
Right.
So it does afford you a lot of freedom, but I've scaled back on how many I do. First of all, because for like hand repetitive stress injury reasons, like it was completely not sustainable for me to do like 10 of those a week. So I've scaled back, and I do enjoy doing it like once a week. But yeah, I've definitely kind of been like, you know what, I don't actually want to be doing this as my main gig, even though it's lovely, and even though they clap for you always at the end, which like.
Well, and you get paid. I mean, you get some bread. I mean, I'm just on a mission, really, in my mind, to make sure that people that are creating, especially that's the other part I have a big problem with, Julia, is just people that are making a living playing other people's music. I've never understood the concept of, in the sense of like, you have like tribute bands or people that are just like incessantly going on tour, just playing the same stuff over and over again. And it's like, I get that you want to placate the audience. I mean, these people are paying $60 to go see a show. Whatever they're expecting to see, you feel this, they want to hear the hits. Well, I don't agree with. I mean, I'm in La La. I'm in my own land, but I really believe that like people should be paying to see Julia Chen and hear Julia Chen's original tunes and let the body dance. That's the other part of it. I don't know how we got to a point where we've learned to sit and stare at somebody's facility, because like when I come see you perform, I'm going to be dancing. I'm going to be having out of body experiences. Like this is descarga for me. You talk about Afro-Cuban music, Mongo Santa Maria, they used to perform spiritual rituals with the drums and in Harlem, and that is the release. That's the healing nature of music, and I never want that to be lost, and I feel like it's being so shrouded in this sort of quantized, and that's a whole other issue, is quantized rhythm versus making the rhythm round. But can we do part 2 this week, or is that possible? We just have a lot more to get to with you.
Oh, part 2 of the interview?
Yeah, because I have another one right now. I just would love to. I just feel like we're just starting to cook here. So, but it's you just keep doing your thing, Julia. You got a good thing going on here, and I appreciate you going there with me. Maybe you can think about the significance of music, how it's changed in our culture. We can start off. I just feel like now, in many ways, it's for multitasking. It's for pacification, and it's not for a deep. I mean, Art Blakey used to talk about. The people that are coming to see him, it's his job to wash away the dust of everyday life for those patrons that are coming in to see him. And I feel that's your job too. and you do it with your own music. And so it was such a high honor to connect with you.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much for having me. Hope to talk again soon.
We will. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Have a good interview after this.
Yeah, okay, later on.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.